As the scene unfolds, a man forcefully states that Rude has been kicked out of the party. Hearing this, Rude is visibly confused, but the man shouts again, emphasizing that Rude has been expelled and is completely useless to them. At that moment, Fo tells Mr. Trump to calm down, saying that the decision is unfair. However, Rude asks why this is happening so suddenly. May then responds by asking whether he truly did not see this coming, or if it is simply too hard for him to accept the situation. Shine adds that she had already voiced her objection, but since it was meaningless, she accepted that this decision reflected the will of the entire team. After that, Rude reflects on how it has been 5 years since Trump established the Golden Rose. He recalls how Trump took him in as an orphan and how, from that day onward, he did everything he could to prove his usefulness. He had genuinely believed that he was an indispensable member of the party. Trump then asks whether Rude still does not understand that his presence in the team is meaningless. He further questions whether Rude even understands the party's fighting style, briefly explaining that Fo and he handle the front lines, May provides support from the rear, and Shine deals with the undead and provides healing when necessary. Hearing this, Rude thinks to himself that he already knows this, as he was the one who originally figured out that combat structure. However, Trump goes on to declare that the front line is already fully covered. He adds that Rude's magic attacks are lackluster, and that even as a support member, his abilities are only average at best. Trump then questions what the party actually gains from Rude, given his poor weapon handling, stating that being useless is a serious problem. Rude responds by admitting that it is true he is somewhat weak, but insists that without assistance and help. Before he can finish his sentence, Trump cuts him off, shouting that Rude is nothing but an obstacle. He argues that everyone can at least serve as a loader or a navigator. Rude then clarifies that he did not mean that kind of support. He admits that he is not a support specialist and asks whether anyone was meant to fill that role. He reminds them that back in high-level dungeons, and even now, he has always been the one providing strategies for every battle. Upon hearing this, the entire group bursts into laughter. May remarks that they have already risen to S rank, thanks to strategic combat, and then questions whether an A-rank dungeon today would even pose a challenge to them. Trump follows up by stating that he cannot imagine what use Rude could have, adding that even without support magic, they manage just fine. May agrees, saying that Master Trump is a hero who guarantees safety every time, and bluntly states that Rude is simply afraid and rambling about being the head and commander of the team. Shine concludes by saying that this is merely the will of the gods, and that abandoning the weak is a natural process. In desperation, Rude tells them to calm down, insisting that his support abilities will activate soon. However, Trump ignores him and roars that he already said they do not need a parasitic brat. Trump then reveals that they have already found Rude's replacement and have even signed a contract for their next dungeon expedition. He explains that Puff, a support specialist with a much higher level than Rude, will be joining them instead. Trump finishes by stating that Rude cannot meet the requirements of S-rank adventurers, and that removing the useless is simply the norm. Despite everything, Rude thinks that he has done nothing to deserve being hated, and he feels he has to say something because he cannot simply let this go. He admits that the party will surely need his magic skills, and asks to be allowed to prove himself in the next dungeon excavation, insisting that he can do many other things aside from support. He then reflects that he memorized countless spells specifically for the party, many of which he never even had the chance to use. Although it is true that he was the only one treated like a slave by Trump, a truly horrible person, the party was still the only home he had. Rude remembers how Trump once felt like a ray of light to him after giving him shelter. However, Trump suddenly shouts again that they do not need Rude. As he walks away, he tells the others to hurry and head to the restaurant they had booked, while Mai casually tells them to work hard and leave the strategy to her. After that, Shine tells Puff not to forget to express gratitude for being given the opportunity to accompany their team. Suddenly, Trump steps close to Rude and whispers into his ear that he will destroy Rude's credibility as an adventurer. Hearing this, Rude asks if he is serious and whether he will regret it, but Trump and the others simply walk away laughing. Left behind in the corner, Rude quietly mutters his farewell, saying that he still appreciates them. Later, as he enters his room, Rude mutters to himself that they have to be joking to go that far, and he cannot believe they actually went through with it. An elderly woman then asks if it is really Rude, and says she is surprised to see him back so suddenly, adding that she will feel sad since the town rarely has such a kind adventurer like him. Rude replies that he has finished packing his belongings in the hall. Seeing his small bag, the landlady asks in confusion whether that is truly all he has. Just then, Trump's voice echoes in his ears once more. Holding his head, Rude tells himself to forget it, deciding that he does not want to remember any of it ever again and that he should leave it all behind. After that, while staring at his glove, Rude decides that he no longer needs to carry it with him. He reflects that he always wore it because it was a final magic item, so it could not be helped and could not be sold, as it was a support magic item belonging to Trump and his group. Rude then recalls an incident from the past when they were once ambushed by a group of thieves in the middle of the night. He had noticed them in advance, preventing any harm. Since then, he had always kept his enhancement magic active, as the activation method was complicated, required constant alertness, and consumed a significant amount of mana. He continues by thinking that magic items were created to support advanced support magic skills. He then releases all of them, quietly stating that this is his true farewell to everything. At that moment, he suddenly senses something strange and wonders if the flow of mana in his body has become unbalanced, considering that 5 years have passed. To his surprise, he realizes that his body feels light and his mind feels clear. He had not noticed it before, but then he wonders if that too had been consuming mana. He briefly questions whether Trump's group will be fine without his support, but immediately dismisses the thought, reminding himself that he is no longer their teammate. Despite everything, Rude looks up at the sky and realizes that he had never noticed how beautiful the starry night sky truly was. He reflects that this was because he had always locked himself away, endlessly researching magic, but now he no longer needs to live like that. He thinks about how he used to shut himself inside a dark room every night or spend his rewards on absurdly expensive magic books just to activate spells. Now, however, he believes that simply roaming around as an adventurer will not be too difficult anymore. Filled with excitement, Rude feels that he cannot wait. From now on, he can finally do whatever he wants, walk around freely, shop, eat well, and enjoy the things he truly likes. He continues by thinking that he will finally live the life he has always wanted. However, before that, he must leave this town, not for Trump's sake, but for his own will. He resolves to become an adventurer once again. Meanwhile, inside a Manhwa restaurant, Puff raises her glass and cheerfully says that she is pleased to meet everyone, introducing herself as Puff, a support mage who has joined the Golden Rose Party. Trump responds by saying that he booked the entire restaurant to celebrate the occasion, and Puff thanks him for it. Puff then explains that since her specialty is support magic, she has developed the ability to measure others' combat strength, which she calls aura. As she observes them, she thinks to herself that this truly is an S-rank party, as she has never seen such an overwhelming aura before. She feels a bit uneasy about accompanying such extraordinary individuals, but she is not afraid. Trump tells her that they will be counting on her starting tomorrow and comments that she seems to be a good drinker. Puff responds that she will do her best. Before long, everyone collapses from drinking too much, leaving Trump alone. When Puff regains her senses, she suddenly notices something strange. She wonders if their aura is disappearing, as just moments ago it resembled that of an S-rank party, but now it feels closer to a rank. She corrects herself, sensing that it is more like B-rank adventurers, though still stronger than ordinary ones. Eventually, she realizes that even applying large amounts of support magic would not be enough to raise these 4 people to S-rank. She concludes that achieving such a feat would be nearly impossible, unless someone possessed godlike power. Elsewhere, Rude thinks to himself that traveling at night is not so bad after all. He notices a faint light in the eastern direction and estimates that, at this pace, he will reach Roland in about a month. He recalls that the great continent of Pagan is divided into 3 territories: the Demon Territory, which is the most dangerous, the Higher Kingdom, where he is currently located, and the Roland Empire, which is his final destination. He further reflects that both Higher and Roland are regions where humans live, also known as the Mortal Realm. His main concern now is food, as he only has a small amount of water and a single hard loaf of bread left. Even if he conserves it carefully, it will only last about 3 days, after which he plans to catch fish or hunt for meat. According to the map he remembers, there should be a small forest to the southeast, some distance away. As he looks up, he wonders if Trump's group has already finished packing up. He quickly dismisses the thought, reminding himself that they are no longer his teammates and that there is no point worrying about them. Suddenly, he hears a cry for help. Reacting instantly, Rude activates his wind speed boost. When he arrives at the scene, he thinks that he may have come too late. A man nearby asks what is going on. Seeing the scene before him, Rude realizes that they are bandits. The horse carriage is completely wrecked, and all of the bodyguards are dead. It is the same kind of group again. People who rob others and kill innocent lives simply to satisfy their own desires. With fury burning in his eyes, Rude charges forward, deciding that there is no need for hesitation. Activating his magic formation, he leaves the bandits frozen in confusion. The moment he unleashes the electric blade cyclone, they panic and flee for their lives. Watching them run, Rude calmly states that they were the ones who attacked first. He then turns and walks toward the carriage, remarking that the spell had decent power, and noting that this was the first time he had actually used an attack magic he once read about in a thesis. Leaning forward to peer inside the carriage, Rude mutters that the immediate danger has been dealt with, and that there may still be survivors inside. As he looks closer, he notices a young girl tied up. The thought crosses his mind that this must be a slave trader's carriage. He tells her that all the bandits have been dealt with, but upon seeing her condition, he notes that she does not look well at all. After spotting another corpse nearby, he realizes that the other slaves are already dead. He understands that if he leaves the girl as she is, she will bleed to death. Although it has been a long time since he last used recovery magic, he decides there is only one way to find out if he can still do it. Rude casts body restoration magic on the girl, but the moment he activates body analysis, shock runs through him. He realizes that her injuries are severe, with even her internal organs damaged. These are not fresh wounds, but the result of long-term abuse from her life as a slave. On top of that, she is suffering from multiple diseases. After a brief pause, he casts detoxification and strength recovery magic on her. Suddenly, his eyes fall on an overturned water drum. He reasons that the water should still be usable, as there is only one point of leakage. He decides to use purification and dry cleaning magic to wash everything away. Noticing that her clothes are badly torn, he reuses some fabric and casts clothing creation magic to properly shape them. Once everything is finished, Rude wipes the sweat from his forehead and says that it should be done. The girl, now able to look at herself, is completely startled. She expresses that her body no longer hurts and wonders if her wounds and illnesses have truly been cured. Meanwhile, Rude reflects that this is the first time he has cast so many spells consecutively. He feels completely exhausted and realizes that he still has not optimized his magic efficiency well enough. The girl then thanks him, but Rude tells her not to worry about it, explaining that he simply did what he wanted to do to help her. As his gaze shifts, he notices the emblem hanging on her chest. He realizes that he has never seen such a symbol before. Just as Rude reaches out to touch the emblem, the girl suddenly screams in fear. Startled by her reaction, he asks what is wrong. Trembling, she apologizes, explaining that she thought he was about to hit her. She says that she knows he would not do such a thing, yet still begs him not to hurt her, promising that she will behave, not resist, and not try to run away. Her words leave Rude frozen in place. A painful realization crosses his mind, that the cause of her fear lies in the treatment she endured, and that no recovery magic can heal such deep emotional wounds. Without hesitation, he pulls her into a tight embrace and tells her that there is nothing to be afraid of, assuring her that he will not hurt her. Hearing this, she asks in a trembling voice if he truly will not look at her with that cruel, hateful stare. Rude promises her that everything is fine now. Moments later, the girl suddenly bows deeply before him and says that she has calmed down. She apologizes for letting him see such an embarrassing display. Rude immediately tells her that it is fine and that it does not matter. More importantly, he asks her what happened. The girl replies that she does not fully understand what happened herself. She explains that a group of people suddenly attacked them, saying that the information did not match, and then began killing everyone. As he listens to her story, Rude's expression hardens, and he begins thinking to himself about what their true purpose could have been. There is no way such an attack would happen without reason, and he bitterly reflects on how lawless this territory truly is. While he is lost in thought, the girl thanks him and asks for his name. Rude introduces himself, and the girl responds by calling him Rude-sama and introducing herself as Sue. Hearing her name, Rude replies warmly that it is a pleasure to meet her, and says that they should get moving now. He then explains that if they remain there any longer, the bandits may return. He adds that he can cast a repair spell on a horse carriage, and that by using earth magic, he can also create simple graves. Rude continues by saying that, at the very least, they should mourn the dead. If the bodies are left behind, hound beasts will eventually devour them. Since there is not much time, he suggests making a shared grave, hoping that the fallen might forgive them. After that, Rude concludes that since there is no horse, he will cast a spell to make the carriage move. He plans to use a wind spell to spin the wheels and keep it going. Just then, Sue reaches out from behind, holds his hand, and asks him to become her master. In the next scene, Sue began begging him to become her master and allow her to stay by his side. Listening to her, Rude grew slightly irritated and wondered why such a small girl was holding her chin up and speaking like that. However, when memories of his own past surfaced, Rude calmed down and reflected on how a man could possibly reject an abandoned child. He recalled how he himself had no choice but to go to an orphanage, where he was eventually taken in by the tramp's gang. Rude went on to reflect that his memories of the orphanage had faded over time, and he no longer had any connection to that place. That had been done deliberately, so he would be unable to escape after being sold to a merchant, regardless of whether that place turned out to be cruel or not. He further thought that there was no place for him to return to, yet the humiliation still lingered, and he cursed everything, the slavery system included, because those feelings had never truly disappeared. At that moment, Sue apologized, thinking that no one would want someone as weak and useless as her. She believed her body was covered in wounds, lacked any cuteness, and was filthy as well. Using his magic, Rude denied that idea and handed her something that allowed her to see her own reflection. As soon as Sue looked at herself, she became confused and was about to comment on when her clothes had changed. Before she could finish, her expression suddenly brightened, and she smiled happily, twirling her dress and asking how she looked and whether it suited her. Watching her reaction, Rude acknowledged that she was indeed very cute. He thought that somewhere inside her, she carried a mysterious beauty, and without the handcuffs, no one would even notice she had been a slave. He also found her shy, fidgeting expression adorable. Suddenly, Rude became lost in his own thoughts, wondering if he had grown weak toward beastmen. After all, this was the first time he had ever spoken to a beastman little girl, and he had never even spoken to a human girl before. He then questioned himself about when he had started wanting to protect her. Just then, Sue loudly declared that Rude Sama would become her master. Hearing that, Rude realized he could not simply reject her, but he felt the need to make things clear. He conveyed that he valued his freedom above all else and wanted her to live a free life as well. Rude emphasized that his current self could not shoulder another life, and besides, Sue was no longer someone's slave and could live a normal, girly life. Unexpectedly, Sue stated that she had become her master's slave of her own free will. Hearing this, Rude immediately denied that this was what he meant. While holding his hand, she asked him to look after her. Later that night, Rude remarked that a horse carriage could also be used as a tent, and that he should check the sleeping area just in case of an emergency. As he helped her step out of the carriage, he mentioned that he needed to gather some food and asked whether she preferred meat or fish. Sue replied that she had only ever eaten bread and milk. After hearing that, Rude suggested trying both and decided he would go hunting. Sue then said that she wanted to go with him, explaining that as his slave she could be of help. Hearing her insistence, Rude reflected that he was afraid she might get upset if he rejected her offer. However, he agreed to go together, but the handcuffs became an obstacle. He explained that Sue's handcuffs were proof that she was still a slave, and since the slave merchant was already dead, he could not erase a third party's slave contract. As a result, Sue's contract had not yet been released. He further explained that Sue had already been placed as a pre-order, and such transactions usually took place within noble circles. If he were to remove the contract and someone found out, it would become a serious crime. Even so, he stated that he had made up his mind to do it anyway. As he began casting the spell, Rude explained that what he was about to use was black magic. More precisely, it was a type of magic capable of eliminating another spell, something an ordinary mage could never do. Despite this, he noted that the contract was extremely secure and did not resemble the work of a single individual. Instead, it appeared to be a complex spell created by an organization, meaning the one who created it was not him. Rude then mentioned that he had once been an S-rank party mage, capable of dealing with dungeon traps and wicked curses alike. He explained that he had always exhausted himself for the sake of his teammates, clearing paths for them, and that this had been his specialty. After that, he broke her handcuffs. Seeing this, Sue stated that the merchant had always claimed that no one could ever remove them. Rude responded that if she wanted to help, it would be better for her hands to be free. Suddenly, Sue denied not only the significance of the handcuffs, but also revealed that he had already cured all her illnesses and wounds. She explained that her incurable disease had been like a curse, something even the geniuses of the church had given up on, and because of it, the villagers had abandoned her. After hearing everything, Rude gently patted her head. Feeling the warmth of the gesture, Sue expressed that it made her feel safe and comforted. She then mentioned that even the clothes her master prepared for her, and the fact that he had saved her from bandits made him her messiah. Rude replied that he was merely an ordinary mage, but Su bowed before him and said that he was so amazing that she could never reach his level. Unexpectedly, Su lowered her head and stated that she truly wanted to stay by her master's side with complete trust and devotion. She said that she wished to dedicate her life and loyalty to him. She continued pleading, saying she sincerely wished to remain with him and depend on him for protection and guidance. Seeing the seriousness in her eyes, Rude thought about the process, drawing blood, signing a contract, and taking a vow of eternal service. But despite understanding it, he realized he did not want to make Su his slave. He apologized and explained that he could not do that. Instead, he kissed her on the forehead and mentioned that among beastmen, kissing someone's forehead was traditionally a sign of friendship. Rude then stated that he had always believed their relationship was something better than a mere master-servant bond. Hearing this, Su was left in shock and cried out that it should not have been possible, questioning why she had suddenly leveled up so much. Rude wondered if their relationship had truly evolved from master and servant into friendship, concluding that he was simply shy. Rude knelt down in front of her, and without warning, Su kissed him. She explained that from a girl's perspective, receiving a kiss meant something significant, and that was her response. She then asked him to take care of her. It was then explained that even though Rude was knowledgeable, there were things he did not know. Even among beastmen, each tribe had its own culture. In Su's tribe, a kiss carried different meanings depending on the situation, and a kiss on the forehead symbolized a marriage proposal. On the other hand, when a girl kissed a man on the lips, it symbolized deep trust and emotional commitment in her tribe's culture. Su felt shy as she realized how bold she had been, reflecting on how emotionally significant that moment was for her. Meanwhile, from another location, Trump exclaimed that they were in the heinous dragon's den of an A-rank dungeon. Though he admitted he had drunk too much, Mi agreed, saying she had done the same. Eventually, Fo mentioned that her mana was fading in such a terrible state, and Shine responded that even the drunkenness had affected her as well. Just then, Trump asserted that if someone had put something strange into the wine last night, he would beat that stupid restaurant into the ground after they cleared the dungeon. He then demanded to know when they were going to stop whining, declaring that it was time to excavate the dungeon. After that, everyone agreed and said they would give it their best shot. However, Puff stepped forward and raised her hand. Seeing this, Trump joked that the wine must have gotten to her as well. Puff denied it and instead asked how they were planning to proceed today. Hearing that, Trump questioned what she meant by taking hold of anything. Puff then clarified that she was talking about the dungeon excavation and suggested that it would be better for them to cancel it for the day. Trump questioned what she was rambling about and thought to himself that he had gone through all that trouble just to kick that brat out, and now she was acting just like him. Puff then explained that supporting magic was her specialty, so she understood it well. She compared it to their fighting power and referred to it as aura. Trump responded that this sounded impressive and asked what the problem was. Puff then revealed that their current condition was not good at all. She stated plainly that their fighting power had significantly dropped, roughly by about a rank or down to B rank level. Instead of listening, everyone burst out laughing. Trump remarked that she had come up with a funny joke and even sounded cool saying it. Fo, still laughing, said that Puff had made her laugh with how serious she looked, while Mi added that there was no way someone could drop to B rank just because they were drunk. Shine suggested that maybe Puff had miscalculated. However, Puff shouted back that she knew what she was talking about, and that this kind of mistake usually did not happen. Puff went on to explain that the day before, everyone's aura had been monstrous, something she had never seen at the guild before, and she knew for certain that it had been S rank. Hearing this, Trump proudly declared that they were S rankers and added that if she was talking about a B ranker, then there was only that one loser left. However, Puff clarified that what she had seen was their condition in the past. She expressed fear that if things continued like this, there could be casualties. Trump began to think it over, acknowledging that if an expert like Puff was saying this, then it was true that his body had never felt this bad before. He admitted to himself that in his current state, his strength would not be the same as usual. Even so, he shouted in denial, declaring that if they could not clear the dungeon today, then everything would be meaningless. He reasoned that failing to clear it today would mean they would miss the king's deadline. He stated that this was not a simple request but a trial meant to judge them, and ordered everyone to toughen up. He insisted that S-rankers failing due to drunkenness would receive no forgiveness. Fo agreed with him. May stated that she would not let her guard down, and Shine said they would finish the job properly. Suddenly, Puff shouted that the issue had nothing to do with their level. Trump cut her off, saying he did not have time for her foolish speech. He dismissed her as a meddlesome kid and thought to himself that he would deal with her attitude later in private. In his imagination, he pictured her apologizing for speaking out of turn, reinforcing his own twisted sense of authority. Snapping out of his thoughts, Trump happily concluded that this was the important part, urging her to hurry up and adore him, calling her his dear Puff-chan. Finally, Trump shouted for everyone to begin the excavation. Hearing this, Puff was left completely speechless. In the next scene, the battle began, with Fo being the first to move, followed by Mi unleashing her fireball magic. Fo then shouted at Trump, ordering him to attack, but Trump snapped back and told her to shut up, warning her not to dare point at him. After activating his Rose and Cross magic, Trump thought to himself that they were the strongest. Meanwhile, Sue asked whether Rude had been kicked out, though she admitted that he did not seem like someone who would be expelled, calling it a pity. Hearing this, Rude wondered where she had even learned such a word. Rude then explained that it was because he lacked potential, while his former party had been exceptional. He went on to explain that the party had started at the lowest E rank and steadily climbed all the way to SS rank. Even now, only one party in the world was recognized as SSS rank, the legendary Heroes party that had defeated the Demon King. Rude continued by stating that there were currently only 3 S-rank parties and 7 S-rank parties, at least within the higher region. He admitted that it had been an honor for him to be chosen to join them. Hearing this, Sue exclaimed that it was strange, insisting that her master was incredible and that she had never seen anyone who was both that strong and that kind at the same time. Growing angry, Sue continued by saying that calling her master someone with no potential made no sense, and that it was a terrible waste of his talent. Seeing her reaction, Rude reflected that this was the first time someone had ever gotten angry on his behalf. Although it felt confusing, it also made him strangely happy. Still, he thought sadly about what he could even say in response. After all, they were S-rankers, and everyone had always been much stronger than him. At that moment, they were likely deep inside an S-rank dungeon. While holding his hand, Sue declared that he had her now and asked him not to make that expression. Rude thanked her and admitted that it seemed he had accidentally overdone it a little. Looking out the window, Rude stated that they were currently in a town within Roland territory. He then expressed his desire to become an adventurer again. Hearing this, Sue asked if he truly intended to return to being an adventurer. Rude agreed, though he wondered whether he was capable of it. Immediately, Sue declared with confidence that he would definitely become the greatest adventurer of all time. Hearing her words, Rude reflected that Sue's encouragement always supported him. Even though she was not a mage, she strengthened his resolve every time. He then thought that she might have the potential to become an even greater mage than himself. He resolved that he would rely on his own strength and once again rise to S rank. At the same time, Trump questioned whether Mai was certain that they were taking the right path, thinking that he had seen that route before. Mai responded that it was the correct path and that she was sure of it. Trump replied that she had better not lead them astray, since they had to clear the dungeon that day. Just then, Mai asked whether it was still this dark further ahead and requested Shine to make it a little brighter. Shine responded that using too much magic power just to cast a light spell would be wasteful. Before Shine could say more, Fo interrupted, asking what they thought they were doing, reminding them that she had already warned them not to get in Trump's way. Shine fired back that Fo should be the one to deal with the enemies faster, since Shine wanted to conserve her mana. Hearing this, Fo was shocked and shouted back, complaining that her body already felt terrible, and asked Trump for confirmation. With that, Trump agreed, admitting that he had not yet recovered to his original strength. Normally, a single hit would have been enough to finish an enemy, but this time, he declared that he would fight like a true hero. Fo responded that this would do, and then urged me to hurry and find the correct path. However, she asked whether they should avoid routes where monsters appeared. Mi told her not to overreact and insisted that it had to be the right path. She then questioned whether Shine's light was weakening. Shine admitted that it was true, and said she had not been feeling well that day. Growing frustrated by their continued chatter, Puff explained that she was a support specialist mage who had recently joined the S-rank party. She remarked that although party roles and positions existed, their current behavior had nothing to do with assignments, and that they looked exactly like a rookie party. She further explained that they were currently on the 4th floor of a 12-floor dungeon. The deeper they went, the stronger the monsters became, gaining higher levels and more magical power. Under these circumstances, she stated that it was only natural to feel anxious. Puff continued by explaining that the most recent monster they had encountered was a zombie goblin. On the power scale, it was merely a junior B-rank monster, something S-rank adventurers should have been able to defeat easily. However, she pointed out that Trump had underestimated the enemy and did not use his full strength. Even with foe assisting him, the two of them fighting together were only evenly matched against a single zombie goblin. Trump had been so focused on that enemy that he failed to sense another goblin lying in ambush. They had only won thanks to Mii's magic. Even so, the power of that spell did not resemble a true attack spell. It lacked the rumored ability to burn enemies to ash, and this confirmed Puff's judgment that their current potential had fallen to around B rank level. Although Puff acknowledged that they might be able to return to S rank someday, she concluded that now was not the time for that. She insisted that they needed to retreat to a less dangerous floor immediately, or else they would all end up dead. Meanwhile, in front of the guild building, Rude stated that this was Roland's Adventure Guild. The moment they stepped inside and saw the crowd, Rude thought that both the town and the guild looked almost identical to those in High Air, leaving him with the impression that there was nothing particularly new. Suddenly, a girl approached them and welcomed them to Bunny Bell, Roland's Adventurer Guild. She asked what they were looking for. Rude replied that he wanted to register as an adventurer. The receptionist bowed and said she would handle the procedure. She introduced herself as Inan, explaining that she was a receptionist and that it was a pleasure to meet them. She then asked whether the young lady with him also wished to register. Sue replied that she was her master's slave and did not need to sign up. Hearing this, one of the men sitting nearby muttered in disbelief that the man was claiming the little girl as his slave. Another commented in surprise about seeing a rare beastman. Hearing these remarks, Rude realized there was a misunderstanding. Inan clarified that only the gentleman would be registering, and Rude thought to himself that things seemed to be heading in an awkward direction. As Inan handed him the paperwork, she said she would prepare the registration and first asked him to sign the policy form. While filling it out, Rude felt genuinely excited as he wrote down his name and age. Suddenly, a man questioned whether the little girl was lost, saying that this was not a place for someone like her. He then apologized to Rude, remarking that Rude looked weak and fragile and that he did not recognize him at all. Further, the man exclaimed after taking another look that Rude had a cute face, so he wondered what the problem was and suggested that instead of becoming an adventurer, someone like him should be introduced to a better job. Rude responded by telling him to stop blabbering and to stay quiet. Unexpectedly, the man snatched Rude's pen and shouted that adventuring was a man's world, not a place for someone feminine like a kid, and that seeing a delusional fool like Rude there made him feel sick. However, Rude calmly replied while taking the pen back, saying that he was still in the middle of writing. The man then challenged him, asking how he planned to take it back, adding that an adventurer also needed physical strength. Rude asserted that such poor quality behavior was common among countryside adventurers and that it was the same everywhere. Hearing this, the man demanded to know what Rude had just said and charged at him in anger, shouting that Rude should not dare underestimate him. The moment Rude saw the attack coming, he calmly evaluated the man's physical strength, his position shift, and the flow of mana. He judged the attack power to be no more than that of a B-rank adventurer, and remarked that he had already said it would have been better if such aggression were left to hooligans. Rude then punched him and explained that even though he had been expelled, he was still a former S-rank party member. He had cast body enhancement on his right hand and shifted into a punching formation, so there was no need for an incantation when facing a B-rank opponent. Groaning in pain, the man asked what that attack was, clutching his stomach. He wondered if Rude had cursed him as a specialized mage and demanded to know what he had done. Rude replied that he was just a normal mage and could not use curses or anything of that sort. As the man began shouting again in rage, Rude noted the surprisingly quick recovery time and considered that, in terms of stability, the man might eventually rise to B rank. When Rude saw another attack coming, he stepped forward without hesitation and pulled Sue behind him to shield her from harm. Standing firmly in front of her, Rude raised his hand and cast a spell at the man, leaving him dazed, his eyes filled with confusion and fear as he staggered back, unable to comprehend what had just happened. After that, Rude stated that at this level, even fighting all day would not break through his protection wall, and if the man still wanted to try, he was free to do so. Rude then apologized to Sue and asked if she had been scared earlier. Sue denied it, saying that she believed in him. Just then, the man shouted for Rude to stop with the stupid act, but while continuing to fill out the form, Rude replied that he should behave more like an adult, and that once he finished his business, he would let him go. Rude reflected that he had caused quite a commotion, but resolved not to let it distract him again. The man continued shouting at the top of his lungs, yet his words had no effect as Rude calmly and composedly kept filling out the form. Suddenly, the man attempted to break Rude's magic, but when he realized that his desperate effort had no effect at all, he froze in shock. Watching the entire scene, a boy remarked that if one had not been paying close attention, the earlier punch would have been easy to miss, explaining that it was an epigastric strike and that Rude was incredibly strong. Another boy responded that the stomach was the only part that's strong, pointing out that it had actually been 2 punches, and that Rude had struck him twice in the same spot. Then Belly excitedly remarked that he could not see it at all, saying that it was impressive, just as expected from a senior. Another man proudly chimed in, insisting that Rude deserved even more praise. Hearing their exchange, Rude wondered where such strange customers had come from, then quietly told Sue that those men were bad news, adding that the attack had actually been 3 punches. Meanwhile, a woman reacted with interest, repeating that it had been 3 punches combined with body enhancement. She noted that it seemed an interesting individual had come to town and decided to see just how far he could go. Elsewhere, Trump shouted in exhaustion and frustration before a massive monster, declaring that they were too strong and questioning why he could not defeat them, no matter how hard he tried. In the next scene, Puff sat beneath a tree, lost in thought, as her mind quietly replayed everything that had happened just minutes earlier on the 5th floor of the Dark Dragon's cursed cave. She recalled Foa addressing Trump-sama and suggesting that they should take a break. On the other side, Mia agreed, mentioning that she also needed to double-check the map, while Shine complained about how exhausted she was and said she needed to replenish her mana first. However, Puff pointed out that at this rate, they should have already figured out what was going on. She tiredly stated that it looked like it was time to retreat, since everyone was clearly worn out. Hearing this, Trump questioned what she was rambling about, saying that this level was still manageable. Instead of opposing him, the others agreed with his opinion, except for Puff. Foe added that they were only halfway through. May commented that this was where the real battle truly began, and Shine told everyone to stay focused. Despite their confidence, Puff thought that they still did not understand the situation at all, and she questioned where all of that confidence was coming from. She felt that it could not be taken seriously, and because of that, she suggested pulling back. Suddenly, Trump warned her that from this point onward, she needed to start using her support magic at full power, since everyone was relying on her. Hearing this, Puff became confused. Foe agreed, saying that it was finally time to show off those skills, and she wondered just how amazing Puff's support magic really was. Mai encouraged everyone to head out and do their best, while Shine remarked that supporting the entire team alone was extremely tough. Puff was startled by this and began to realize just how much they relied solely on her support magic. She thought about how the deeper they went, the stronger the monsters became, and wondered why none of them seemed to understand that. After some hesitation, Puff told them to hold on, explaining that there was no way they would make it with only her support. Trump brushed it off, saying she was just being modest, and questioned whether she was not a high-level support mage. Puff then wondered if it was just her imagination, or if they were really treating her like an errand runner. She questioned whether they even understood what auxiliary magic actually was. It felt strange to her, and she could not help wondering why she was the one handling the luggage and figuring out the route at the same time, since no one could realistically manage all of that alone. She continued thinking that they truly did not understand how demanding support magic was, and that this was why there were so few support mages. Their levels were so low that even their thinking felt rotten to her, and she could not stop these thoughts from circling in her head, leaving her unable to say anything else out loud. Soon after, they began handing their belongings to Puff while questioning her at the same time, asking whether she could handle that much weight, whether the enhancement spells could still be powered up, and whether she could also use Farsight, since they were counting on her as an attacker as well. One of them added that since she had been conserving her magic until now, using both light and support magic together should not be a problem. Hearing all this chatter, Puff hesitantly asked what they were even talking about. Trump then remarked that it was strange, saying that Rude used to carry even more than this. He asked whether she could not just stuff everything into a single bag, mentioned that Rude had also been in charge of navigation, and questioned whether Farsight counted as a supportive type of magic. Shine added that the same applied to lighting magic, stating that it was basically just a tiny chore they had made him handle in addition to combat. Immediately, Puff shouted for them to hold on, questioning how she was supposed to handle all of that at once. She wondered what they even meant by calling those things chores, since there was no such concept inside a dungeon. At the same time, she felt like she had heard the name Rude before, but she could not recall who he actually was. Ignoring her words, Trump told everyone to get moving, saying there was no time to waste. While struggling under the weight of their belongings, Puff explained that she was already handling the map, choosing the correct route, carrying the entire party's luggage, lighting the way with magic, and then switching it out with a torch. She went on to say that if all of that still was not considered enough, then expanding inventory space alone was something only a handful of mages could do. On top of that, being able to use 3 elements, fire, water, and light, at the same time already placed someone at a top-tier level. In response, May casually suggested that if Puff could not carry everything, she should just use levitation to make it float. Hearing that, Puff felt like she was about to cry. Even after explaining everything, their expectations were still far too unreasonable. Suddenly, Trump stated that Rud had been the one in charge of all of those tasks before. Hearing this, Puff reacted in frustration, questioning how someone could possibly be so skilled in every type of magic, especially all at the same time, since that was insanely difficult. She then reflected that she had already asked who this Rud was, and on top of that, the way they described him made it sound like every ability was maxed out to an unimaginable top-tier level. She could not help wondering who this person really was, questioning whether he was some kind of world savior or even a god descended from heaven. Once they arrived on the 6th floor, Puff immediately sensed that the mana flow felt completely different from before. It finally made sense why it was called the Cursed Cave. That overwhelming uneasiness was what a true A-rank dungeon felt like, and no matter how many times she entered such dangerous zones, she could never get used to the tension. Just then, Fo pointed out that it was a one-way path and urged Puff to hurry up. Me followed by saying that this way, they could focus entirely on fighting without worrying about navigation. Noticing Puff's tense expression, Trump asked what was wrong, suggesting that she might be scared, and confidently claiming that once they got started, they would win in no time. However, the moment they stepped deeper into the cave, a massive goblin suddenly appeared before them, releasing a terrifying growl. Seeing it, Trump exclaimed that it was a goblin zombie king, noting its massive size and declaring it must be a boss-level monster. He even called them lucky for running into the boss area. Puff immediately questioned how that could possibly be considered lucky. Staring at the goblin, Puff thought about how strangely confident that mindset was, almost genius in its own way, yet she could not understand why the boss would appear there. She reminded herself that this was the Dark Dragon's cursed cave, and from the name alone, there should be a dragon inside. That meant the final boss had to be a dragon as well. A king-level enemy in such a dungeon could already be dangerous even for A-rankers, and in the worst-case scenario, it might even be an S-rank threat. She further wondered if they had forgotten the dungeon's name altogether, considering there were countless reports detailing each floor. As Trump charged toward the goblin, he declared that it was time to get serious and that their goal was to crush the dungeon completely. From behind him, Mi responded that everything was ready and that they would clear the place out, while Shine added that everyone could leave the healing to her. Eventually, Puff wondered if their enemy being a king tier truly did not worry them at all, or if everything so far had just been an act, some kind of test. She began to think that all the ridiculous demands earlier were meant to prove that if even an S-ranker could not handle this, then it would be game over. She reasoned further that all those B-rank level fights were another way of pushing her to lead the entire team through the dungeon. That must be what it meant to join an S-rank party. It felt like they were testing her, and if she backed out now, she would be disqualified. With that realization, Puff resolved that as a mage, she would do her best. She recalled the words of her beautiful senior, a veteran adventurer from the same guild, who once told her that what truly mattered for an adventurer was not just combat strength, but having a strong heart that would not falter before powerful enemies and the courage to face them head-on. Thinking it through, Puff took her position with renewed confidence. She reminded herself that she was an adventurer, an explorer of the unknown, and no matter how strong the enemy was, she would not back down. At that moment, she was a member of an S-rank party. However, all of that resolve drained away the instant she saw every single member of the team sent flying and completely defeated. Watching the scene unfold, Puff realized they had been wiped out in just a second, and the harsh truth struck her that they were seriously just a bunch of idiots. Stepping forward, Puff cast her light wall magic. As the shimmering barrier formed, she accepted that the king-tier monster would likely exterminate her as well, but if she could at least buy them some time, it would be worth it. After all, zombie-type monsters were vulnerable to light. Glancing at her fallen teammates, Puff noted that they were still alive and decided to leave them aside for the moment. Suddenly, Shine stood up and cast Eros's healing spell over everyone. Struggling to his feet in terrible condition, Trump muttered that they had let their guard down and taken a dirty hit straight to his blind spot. Before anyone could relax, the goblin charged again. Blocking the attack, Trump shouted that he was an S-rank adventurer and told them to leave it to him, declaring that he would kill it himself and clear the dungeon. At the same time, Foe rushed in after him, calling out to Trump-sama. Unfortunately, both of their attacks failed. As everything began to fall apart, Foe cried out in pain, saying that they were all going to die and that it hurt more than anything she had ever experienced. Trump then declared that it would be over in a single hit with his sword skill and shouted at Puff to give them proper support. Hearing this, Puff replied that she was on it and poured everything she had into her magic. As chaos erupted around her, Puff fell silent and reflected on the moment just before their raid. She attempted to cast body enhancement on all members, but she could not provide skill support in the middle of the fight. All of a sudden, Mai stepped forward, casting a flame inferno spell and shouting for them to leave it to her. She began chanting, calling upon the ashes smoldering in her blood to dance and scorch the earth, invoking the ancient flame to reincarnate into the fires of hell and burn everything in its path. Even so, none of it had any effect on the goblin. Seeing this, Mai froze in shock, and in the very next moment, the goblin zombie lunged at her, launching a brutal attack. Watching everything unfold, Shine finally rose to her feet and stated that she had no choice left, concluding that it was time to use her trump card. Raising her hand, Shine began to chant, calling upon Eros, their mother and protector, to grant her strength. Closing her eyes, she unleashed the Purify spell, striking the goblin with divine force. Watching this, Puff noted the agonized scream the creature let out. It was working, but not enough to finish it. She realized that if Shine-san could land just one more hit, it might be over. All of that hope shattered in an instant when Shine collapsed to the ground, saying that she could not hold on any longer. Puff's eyes widened in shock as a chilling realization crossed her mind that they were doomed. However, Puff noticed the goblin zombie screaming in pain and wondered if it was calling for reinforcements. She realized this was their chance. She suggested retreating for now, convinced that the holy magic had already inflicted real damage. At that moment, Puff finally understood what Trump-sama had meant earlier about their former errand boy not being able to keep up with the team. In fact, she reasoned that he must have realized he could not endure such an absurdly unbalanced party and decided to leave. In desperation, she silently begged Mr. Savior Rude to come and save her. At the Bunny Ball Guild, Inan apologized for keeping Rude waiting, but Rude replied that it was fine since he had just finished filling out the form. Inan then said she would confirm something with him. Rude immediately stated that there was something he wanted to confirm first. Inan assumed he meant the quiet man standing behind them and said it was no big deal. However, Rude explained that he was from High Air and had been a former adventurer, but for some reason he had lost his status. Inan responded that this explained why he was so strong. Hearing that, Rude asked if she had noticed earlier. Inan agreed, and he questioned how she could still be smiling as if nothing had happened. Inan replied that being able to smile at all times was one of the basic requirements for a receptionist. Hearing this, Sue thought to herself that Inan truly was an amazing receptionist. Inan then explained that Rude's higher background would not cause much trouble. From the Empire's perspective, the more powerful and talented adventurers they could recruit, the better. She added that the guild welcomed all capable adventurers with open arms, and there was no such thing as turning away talent. Laughing, Inan said she was just kidding and told him not to worry, then asked him to proceed with his registration. Rude reflected that he had not expected Inan to be the one playing tricks on people and realized she had a better sense of humor than he initially thought. Inan then announced that they would begin the tests. She explained that there were two types, one to check compatibility and another to measure strength. Rude replied that he would give it his all. Hearing this, Inan happily praised his attitude and remarked that with his strength, he probably did not even need to take the tests. She added that he also seemed quite knowledgeable about magic. Rude replied that he had been more of a mage than a swordsman in the past. Inan then asked him to follow her. Once they entered the room, Inan explained that the first test was the ability test, and that mages would be tested using a magic orb. She clarified that it was a mana-detecting orb. Staring intently at the orb, Rude reasoned that it would react to the mana of whoever touched it and emit different colors of light, meaning it likely measured mana based on brightness. Inan confirmed that this was correct and asked whether he had seen it before. Rude replied that he had only read about it in books and that this was his first time seeing the real thing. Inan said that meant Rude understood its function and explained that if his mana level and attribute affinity met the required standards, he would pass. Rude admitted that he had never heard of attribute affinity and did not consider himself particularly gifted with magic. He added that he did not even know his own affinity. He then explained that he had simply replicated techniques using methods he could manage, burying himself in magic books. In the process, he had learned to use every attribute, sometimes pushing himself so far that he would lose consciousness, feel as though he were dying, and even bleed from the nose. Inan then asked him to channel his mana into the orb and told him not to worry, assuring him that it would not break. She explained that only the strongest mage recorded in history could destroy the orb using pure mana, stating that the great saint was the only one known to have done so. If Rude somehow managed to break it, she added, it would be extraordinary. Hearing this put Rude at ease. He realized he did not need to hold back and could give it everything he had. He said he would begin. Adjusting her glasses, In told him to go ahead. However, when no light appeared on the orb, Rude became confused. In the next scene, Rude explained that the strongest magician in history, Manhwa the Great Sage, and Hyer, the master of the sacred sword, also known as the Great Hero Cornlin, were both heroes from the era of the supercontinent. Today, they are revered as two of the mightiest legends in history and were core members of Ragnarok, the strongest party ever recorded. Because of that, Rude felt it might be an exaggeration to say that only the Great Sage could destroy the mana orb. Still, if the orb was truly as powerful as people claimed, then there was no reason for him to hold back. As soon as he placed his hand on the orb, nothing happened. Confused by the lack of any reaction, Rude wondered why it was not glowing and assumed it should have responded immediately. Thinking it might be too insensitive, he fed it a small amount of mana, but the orb still showed no reaction. He then questioned whether he simply had not used enough mana, or if that amount was not even sufficient to qualify as an adventurer. Deciding there was no point holding back, he resolved to pour every bit of mana he had into it. The moment he placed his hand on the orb and released all of his mana, the crystal shattered instantly. Seeing this, Inan was left stunned. She looked at the shattered orb, and despite everything, a smile formed on her lips. Watching her reaction, Rude found himself surprised, not by the broken orb, but by Inan herself. The crystal orb was said to be unbreakable, and the only person ever known to shatter it was the Great Sage. Even so, Inan let out a strange sound, furrowed her brows, and broke into a cold sweat, yet she somehow managed to maintain her smile. Rude could not help but think that she was truly a professional receptionist. Rude then explained that he had broken the orb by accident. Inan hesitantly replied that the crystal must have been outdated, mentioning that it had been used for ages. She told him not to worry about it, and added that they had a spare, which she went to bring. However, the moment the new orb was used, it shattered once again. Seeing this, Inan asked why this kept happening. At that point, Rude thought this was bad and worried that she might faint, so he used his magic to provide her with some water. After drinking it, Inan said that this had never happened before. Although she did not fully understand what was going on, she remarked that Rude's mana was somewhat unusual. Removing her glasses, Inan explained that when the Great Sage shattered the crystal orb in the past, it had exploded with a light brighter than the sun. According to legend, the light was so intense that it could blind anyone who looked at it, which was why the special measuring glasses existed. She further explained that the glasses were designed to measure a person's talent based on their aura. However, this time there had been no glow at all. Hearing this, Rude thought that it was probably because his attributes were essentially zero and that there was nothing special about his magic attribute. All of a sudden, Sue shouted that this made no sense. She pointed out that her master could use countless powerful spells, so it was strange for him to claim there was nothing special about his magic. Sue then continued, insisting that she was certain her master's power was even greater than that of the Great Sage, and that this must be why he was able to shatter the crystal orb. After hearing this, Rude apologized and reflected that he had always been confident in the number of spells he could cast and the sheer amount of mana he possessed. Still, Rude wondered if being stronger than the Great Sage was a bit too cliché, considering he had studied magic from all over the world. Anne then said that it might be true to some extent, as she had personally noticed Rude's magic during the earlier fight, especially when he used an advanced level spell. Because of that, Inan concluded that there must have been some kind of malfunction with the previous crystal orb, since it should have reacted regardless of whether the mana was strong or weak. After all, it had not glowed at all. Hearing her conclusion, Rude thought that explanation worked well enough. Since Inan had not noticed anything strange herself, he saw no reason to tell her the truth. he decided that saying anything more would only embarrass her, so he kept silent. So, Inan concluded that being able to cast such an advanced magic spell, one that exceeded normal mana limits without any irregularities, meant that his power was likely so vast that the crystal simply could not measure it. However, she then admitted that something still felt off. She explained that they could not properly evaluate Rude's strength that way, since both his estimated mana and compatible attribute were showing up as infinite. Even so, she reasoned that this was precisely because his mana was off the measurable scale, which was why it appeared infinite, and that explanation made perfect sense to her. Hearing this, Sue happily remarked that this was exactly what she expected from her master and called it amazing. Rude, on the other hand, questioned whether it was really acceptable to evaluate him based purely on intuition. Inan confidently replied that it was fine and assured him that he could trust her instincts 100%. She then added that it seemed she had not misjudged his abilities after all. With that settled, she decided to look for a magical tool capable of measuring his mana properly, after which they would redo his test. Meanwhile, Rude pointed out that something strange had clearly happened with his measurement results. Inan then moved on to the next step, announcing that it was time for the strength test. She explained that they would proceed with the practical magic evaluation, which was usually conducted in the previous room. However, since Rude's mana was considered infinite, they would carry it out outdoors as a precaution. Hearing this, Rude wondered to himself whether he really seemed that untrustworthy, or if Inan was still holding a grudge over him breaking 2 crystal orbs. As she prepared the test, Inan introduced the target, calling it 5, a slime ball. She explained that all he needed to do was attack the target using magic. He was free to use any magic he wanted, as long as it was basic attack magic, and there was no need to worry about attributes. Rude then asked whether he was allowed to destroy the slime. Inan responded that he could go ahead, since it was something that could be destroyed. Even so, Rude felt that her reaction was not what he had expected. It also felt familiar, as though he had seen that confident expression of hers before. Despite her cheerful nature, she seemed more predictable than he had initially thought. Rude then asked whether the slime was actually easy to destroy. Inan confidently replied that 5 was indestructible, explaining that it was an extremely special specimen made from golden slime. Rude then elaborated on what that meant. Golden slime was a rare, mini-sized Rank-A monster with a distinctive golden body. Unlike ordinary slimes, it possessed unusually high physical attack power and was nearly impossible to defend against. In exchange, it also had overwhelming magical resistance and was capable of using powerful offensive magic. Because of how rare it was, Rude noted that he had only ever heard of such a monster through rumors. At that point, Inan pointed toward the target and explained that even a slime ball made from golden slime was something that even S-rank adventurers struggled to defeat. Hearing this, Rude remarked that this meant he would not be able to destroy it using mere basic attack magic. Inan responded that the slime was absolutely indestructible, and jokingly added that 5 would surely avenge the 2 shattered crystal orbs, since it was a golden orb itself. Rude thought to himself that, as expected, she was still holding a grudge over the broken crystal orbs. He then asked if breaking it would mean he passed the test. Inan replied that the purpose of the test was to evaluate his ability to control magic in real combat situations. As long as he could precisely hit the target, he would pass without issue. She further explained that although 5 was completely indestructible, its outer layer was coated with a mono-reactive gel, which would leave visible marks wherever it was struck. So, Rude muttered to himself that the test was more about accuracy than raw power. He reasoned that this meant focusing on precision and carefully limiting the amount of mana poured into a spell would be enough to pass without any issue. However, Inan added that if he wanted a higher score, he could aim for the center, and that even breaking it would not be such a bad thing. Hearing that, Rude thought she seemed more invested in this than he had expected. Still, since she put it that way, he felt he could not simply hold back, especially with his pride as a mage on the line. Rude then said that he would give it his all and asked if she was truly sure it was fine. Inan confidently reassured him, saying that this time she could guarantee it would not break. Even so, Rude admitted that he felt uneasy about it. Inan immediately raised her voice and insisted that it was completely fine. Rude recalled that she had said the same thing earlier, but decided to trust her this time. After all, this was a perfect chance to understand his own limits without holding back. Suddenly, Inan called out to him. When he asked what was wrong, she questioned whether he was planning to use a magic staff or some other tool. Rude replied that he was not used to using one and asked if it was mandatory. Inan told him there was no such rule. Hearing that, Rude said that was good, since he always cast magic with his bare hands. At this, Inan reacted nervously, her voice trembling as she repeated that he had never used a staff. Ignoring her reaction, Rude began thinking about which magic he should use. He considered that fire magic was the strongest for offense. He remembered Mei's fireball spell and thought it was a solid option, but then decided that a high-density fire arrow might be more suitable. He began chanting, calling upon the flame that resided within him and commanding it to respond at once. Rude reflected that he had not studied offensive magic in depth, as he usually focused on support spells to aid his companions. Fire attribute support spells were especially rare, and while he understood the theory behind them, adjusting them in practice was difficult. Even so, he decided this was the perfect opportunity to test it. He began by chanting the offensive spell while carefully adjusting the mana flow, turning the inferno into an arrow meant to pierce through blazing winds. He continued by synchronizing with the fire attribute mana and optimizing part of the spell structure. Then he altered the magic formation, discarding fine control in favor of raw power. Once the adjustments were complete, he compressed the mana and deployed a multi-layered magic circle. Watching this unfold, Inan said she had a very bad feeling about what was coming. In the next instant, Rude's fire arrow struck 5, and the slime shattered into pieces. Seeing the result, Inan was struck with overwhelming shock. Her thoughts spun as the reality of what had just happened sank in. She asked whether that had truly been basic magic, wondering aloud if it was not actually an advanced level spell. Rude calmly replied that it was just a simple fire arrow. At that moment, tears streamed down Inan's face as she smiled and declared that he had passed the test. Watching her reaction, Rude wondered whether she was crying or laughing at the same time, once again thinking that she truly lived up to her role as a professional receptionist. After that, Rude apologized, reflecting that he might have gone a bit too far. The spell's power had exceeded even his own expectations, and it seemed he was now capable of properly using offensive magic as well. Suddenly, Sue shouted happily, saying that this was exactly what she expected from her master. In response, Rude remarked that at least this meant he would not have to pay any compensation fees. In the next scene, Inan asked Rude to come with her, explaining that she was about to announce the results of his registration test. Normally, the results would be announced right there, but this time she had received special instructions. After knocking on the door, Inan apologized and said that the application had just come through. When the door opened, a girl was standing inside. The moment Rude saw her, he felt that she was not just an ordinary girl. His eyes were drawn to her sword, and something about it felt off. The girl then thanked him for participating in the registration test and introduced herself as Savinia, the guild master of Bunny Ball. She stated that he must be Rude. Before he could respond, Sue suddenly shouted, declaring that she was Master Rude's slave. Hearing this, Savinia remarked that he had brought along an interesting slave. She then said she was curious about his results, prompting Inan to show her the report. After looking at it, Savinia commented that this was the first time she had ever seen something like this. Rude thought to himself that he had never even heard of such a result before and assumed that Inan must have written it down as unmeasurable and undeterminable. He then considered that if it was undeterminable, it might not even be valid, which was his only concern. However, Savinia announced that he had passed and was now officially a member of the guild. Hearing this, Sue said that it was only natural for her master to pass no matter what. Inan congratulated him, and Rude thanked her in return. Even so, Rude felt a little underwhelmed, though he was still glad. Savinia then explained that he would be ranked E. She added that even knowing his true strength, there was nothing she could do about it, and apologized for that. Rude replied that it was fine, since he was a rookie anyway, and Savinia said she was glad to hear that. Inan, however, could not help thinking that his strength was already at S rank and quietly wondered who Rude really was. Hearing that question, Rude considered telling her that he used to be part of an S rank party, but then thought that a failure like him, someone cast out as useless, had no right to claim such a thing. Instead, Rude simply said that he was a former adventurer. Savinia responded that she did not want to pry into his past, but she had high expectations for a rookie like him. She then said that was enough talk and told him to feel free to pick any quest he liked from the guild's quest board at the entrance. Turning his back, Rude acknowledged her words and said he understood. Before he could step outside, Savinia suddenly drew her sword and declared that she wanted to have a match with him, quickly correcting herself to emphasize that she truly wanted to fight him. Hearing this, Rude asked if this was another test. Savinia denied it, explaining that he had already passed the test and that this was merely a special extra challenge. She added that if they were going to fight, there should be rewards and penalties. If he won, she would give him a prize. Savinia then stated that she would place him in a strong party, an A-rank one, and personally introduce him to them. Rude thought that having teammates would certainly make adventuring easier, and since he did not know anyone in Roland, this was excellent news. Rude then accepted the challenge. Savinia praised his spirit, and he asked about the rules, jokingly hoping it would not be a deadly battle. Savinia agreed on the conditions, explaining that they would fight only once. She would attack him with her sword, and if he managed to block it, he would win. However, if he received even a single scratch, she would be the winner. Hearing this, Rude wondered aloud if that was not a bit unfair. Savinia told him not to worry, assuring him that she would make sure he enjoyed the fight. She then asked if they should begin, reminding him that the match would be limited to that room. Then Savinia ordered Inan to take the girl outside. However, Sue immediately objected, saying that she had to stay because it was her duty to observe the fight and that she would never leave her master's side. Savinia responded that she should not complain if the two of them ended up getting hurt. The moment Rude began activating his magic, Savinia thought that his magic was indeed impressive. Still, she believed that an adventurer could not survive in this world by relying on magic alone. Rude asked what she was trying to say. Charging straight at him, Savinia replied that she would show him exactly how he would take that blow. It was then that Rude realized what was happening. He identified the phenomenon as a magic-suppressing barrier, one that interfered with mana flow and prevented magic usage entirely, commonly known as a magic killer. Savinia wondered aloud how a mage would fight once their magic was sealed, saying that she was genuinely looking forward to seeing it. She reminded him that they had agreed on a sword fight and added that the true essence of being an adventurer was never knowing what would come next. She then urged him to show her how he would truly fight. Something caught Rude's attention. He noticed threads of different colors, realizing they were a temporary trap meant to slow him down. That meant he had no choice but to break through head-on, which would not be easy. As she closed in on him, Rude considered using a technique that combined wind and fire. While dodging her attack, he exclaimed that she was trying to kill him. At the same time, he thought that this actually made things easier, since all he needed to do was keep track of her attacks and analyze them in order to replicate the spell structure. Savinia remarked that he was quite fast. Attacking again, she asked how he would handle this. Watching her movements, Rude began thinking about a weapon with a piercing mechanism and wondered if she had seen his earlier fight. Wiping the sweat from her face, Savinia demanded to see more of his adaptability. Looking at her, Rude thought her eyes seemed almost crazed and wondered if she was a maniac. Still, he decided to play along with her little game. He noted that the sword carried wind attribute and that its natural counter was earth. Seeing him continue to use magic, Savinia remarked that she could feel it, and at an astonishing speed at that. Rude, however, sensed that she was actually enjoying this. Then Savinia suddenly claimed that the battle was already decided, yet she continued obsessively demanding that he show her more of his adaptability. Her words made Rude bristle with anger, and he shouted for her to stop. At that moment, her attack suddenly reversed direction and flew toward Sue. Savinia froze in terror, but the real shock came when Sue survived the attack thanks to a shield. Stunned, Savinia turned to Rude and asked when he had done that. Rude replied immediately that from the very beginning, he had made sure that neither of them would get hurt. Deeply impressed, Savinia remarked that using magic at that level while remaining completely calm and flawless was extraordinary. Rude responded that he was already used to managing massive amounts of mana and had defended properly, which meant he had won. Savinia then admitted that he had beaten her. She could not believe that he had actually destroyed a mithril weapon. Rude apologized, explaining that he had not intended to do that. Savinia burst into laughter and said that he was truly something else. She admitted that she was now interested in him and felt that the tense atmosphere had completely vanished, wishing it could stay like this forever. Rude wondered to himself whether she was a magic fanatic or an adaptation maniac, then dismissed the first thought and concluded it had to be the latter. Just then, Inan mentioned that their guild master was obsessed with adaptability. Hearing that, Rude wondered what kind of guild this was, thinking it seemed to be full of strange people. Walking toward him, Savinia said that it had been a long time since she had met someone as adaptable as him. She said it was a pleasure to meet him and suggested that next time, they should fight again with everything he had. Rude declined the offer, saying that he did not want to fight against a cursed sword. Savinia asked if he had noticed, adding that she thought she had it under control, though she admitted it was not yet perfect. Rude replied that she was being modest. He mentioned that he had heard that inexperienced wielders of cursed swords often lost control of their consciousness, and the fact that she could handle it so calmly proved she had already mastered it. Savinia then declared that the test ended there and told Inan to bring his guild medal. As Inan handed it over, she announced that it was the official adventurer certification from Roland. Holding the medal in his hand, Rude reflected that through his own strength and will, he had finally become an adventurer. For someone like him, that meant everything. He declared that this was how his adventure began, and Sue immediately shouted that she would follow him everywhere. In the next scene, Savinia mentioned that regarding his party, the leader was scheduled to arrive the following day. She explained that she would formally recommend him, and they would be able to meet face to face then. Later, at the reception desk, Rude asked Inan if there was any work he could take on. She replied that he would have to start with E-rank jobs. As she handed him some paperwork, she added that there were also simple requests suitable for solo adventurers. Looking over the paper, Rude remarked that herb gathering was listed, calling it a classic beginner's task. Inan responded that if he joined an A-rank party, he would be able to take on much more challenging requests. But for now, this was all that was available. She asked him to bear with it just for today. Rude replied that he was simply grateful to have work at all. Just then, as he turned around, he noticed a girl standing there, her eyes fixed firmly on him. Turning his head slightly, Rude felt their gazes meet. In the next instant, the girl was right beside him. Breaking the silence, she asked if he was Rude and said she knew it the moment she saw him, adding that his aura felt different. Rude thought to himself that her armor looked rigid and that she felt strangely cold. Suddenly, Sue demanded to know who she was. Savinia then introduced the girl as Liliruru, explaining that she was the leader of Rush Tusk, the Brave Boar's Tusk, an A-rank party affiliated with the guild. Seeing Rude's confused expression, Savinia added that this was exactly the party he had been recommended to. Liliruru then said that she had thought their meeting would not be until tomorrow, but she could not wait that long. After hearing about him from Inan, she decided they had to meet immediately. Hearing Liliruru's name, Inan was startled. Looking at her, Rude thought that she seemed like quite a handful. Liliruru then stepped closer and said she had heard how he overwhelmed Savinia while she was in her frenzied state and managed to turn such an overwhelmingly disadvantageous situation around. Almost immediately, Liliruru asked how he had managed to break through the magic killer. Nervously, Rude thought that she was bombarding him with questions. She continued, asking how a mage could possibly do something like that. Before she could go any further, Inan stepped in and pointed out that she was troubling him. Liliruru quickly apologized, saying she had simply gotten too excited. Still, she added that her eyes never deceived her. Reaching out her hand, she declared that the Brave Boar's Tusk welcomed him with open arms. Stunned, Rude thought that she had come all this way just for that, for him to join her party and find a new place to belong. At the same time, memories surfaced in his mind. The leader Trump and his partner, the martial artist Foe, Me the Saintess, and Puff, the one who had replaced him. He imagined them already out there, making a name for themselves as an S-rank party, and felt that he no longer belonged there. Lost in those thoughts, Rude suddenly collapsed onto Liliruru and fainted. When he woke up, Rude asked where he was. Inan told him that he was in the guild break room. Savinia then remarked that he was awake. Rude immediately bowed deeply toward Liliruru and apologized. Liliruru quickly forgave him. Hearing this, Rude had been certain he would be scolded, especially since she looked noble at a glance. However, Liliruru instead said that earlier he seemed to react strongly to the word party and asked if there was a reason for that. Looking at her, Rude thought about what it meant to truly be an A-rank leader, someone who looked beyond appearances and into a person's heart. He felt it would be rude to remain silent. Breaking the silence, Rude said that she had already heard that he was a higher and that he used to be an adventurer. At that, Liliruru suddenly shouted in anger, saying that kicking him out was impossible, and that anyone who would abandon such talent must be out of their minds. She questioned what kind of thinking could lead to that decision, and what was wrong with his former party. Seeing her reaction, Inan asked her to calm down and added that she herself had never seen a mage on Rude's level before. She said that there were certainly some strange parties among the higher, and that finding a replacement for him was something that simply would not happen. Savinia also muttered that she could not understand it either. She reasoned that either his former party had members so strong that they did not need Rude's power, or they were simply incompetent. Suddenly, Sue cheerfully declared that her master was the greatest mage of them all. Hearing all of this, Rude realized that no one was blaming him. Instead, it felt as though they were angry at Trump and the others for casting him aside. Moreover, Inan explained that being abandoned by comrades he once trusted had left Rude with a deep emotional scar. Hearing that, Liliruru asked if that meant that whenever Rude tried to form a party, he would end up vomiting and passing out. Savinia said that seemed to be the case and remarked that it could be called a party-related phobia. After hearing everything, Sue's heart softened toward him. Meanwhile, Rude realized that he had never imagined things would turn out this way. He had not noticed it himself, but while focusing on healing Sue's trauma, he had been carrying deep-seated trauma of his own. Suddenly, Sue began gently stroking his hair and smiled at him. Seeing this, Rude thought that at this rate, it was hard to tell who the master really was. Savinia said that she understood what Inan was trying to convey. Liliruru then stood up and announced that she would take her leave for the day, suggesting that they discuss Rude joining the party another time. Rude, however, said that since she was a rank, she could attract far more talented people than him, and that there was no need for her to go out of her way to choose someone in his condition. Pointing a finger at him, Liliruru told him to stop being so self-deprecating. She stated that the one she wanted was Rude, and that he should have more confidence in himself because he was worthy of a rank. She then immediately corrected herself, saying that he possessed strength far beyond that. She added shyly that he was the first person ever to splash something like that on her, and that he would have to take responsibility for it. Watching her, Rude wondered why she was blushing so much. Taking his hand, Liliruru declared that no matter what, she would make him join her party, and told him to just wait. Hearing this, Rude reflected that being banished had given him a fresh start, and he decided that from now on, he would live however he wanted. In the next scene, the story shifts to the kingdom of High-Air, to the royal capital of Liliruru. As the most prosperous metropolis in High-Air, it was also the city where the headquarters of the Adventurers Guild was located. There, the king announced that the Golden Rose was being demoted to B rank. Upon hearing this, Trump shouted in protest, insisting that they were S-rank adventurers and questioning how they could be labeled as B rank. The moment he stepped forward in anger, several guards seized him and demanded that he show proper respect before the king. While being restrained, Trump seethed internally, unable to accept that someone of S-rank status was being treated this way, and noting bitterly that the guards themselves were pointlessly strong. On the other hand, Sue shouted with visible delight that she was home. Rude immediately told her to make sure she washed her hands, and she obediently followed his instruction. Liliruru then questioned whether Rude was acting like a father, pointing out that the place even had running water and resembled a walking castle. Rude went along with her comment. He further explained that the carriage he had been heavily modifying throughout their journey from High-Air had completely transformed into a relaxing home for them. He had left it outside the town so it would not attract attention, although it still stood out quite a bit. Rude went on to mention the rumors about it being a walking castle. Apparently, such rumors had existed from the beginning, since he had reinforced its walls excessively against bandits and monsters, and had even tried casting camouflage magic on it later. He then added that meeting so many different people along the way had been refreshing, as he had previously lived like a shut-in, spending all his time studying magic. Taking something out of his bag, Rude handed a bowl to Sue and mentioned that it was her meal for the day. With quiet joy, Sue responded that it was time to dig in. Seeing Sue eating something that looked like medicine, Liliruru asked what it was and what on earth Rude was feeding her. Rude showed it to her and explained that it contained wild boar meat, swordfish fillet, and forest worm fluid. Liliruru then questioned whether it was really just medicine-looking food like that. Hearing her doubts, Rude asked whether they did not have such things in Roland, explaining that they were called supplements. He clarified that it was a proper meal, and if he remembered correctly, it had been developed to efficiently build muscle. Rude continued by saying that he had taken it for granted, but guessed it was a cultural practice unique to High-Air, which placed great value on physical strength. Thinking further, he added that it also had a bad reputation among the trans. Taking one of the supplements in her hand, Liliruru remarked that it was her first time seeing something like it and asked if it really contained boar meat. Rude then explained that he made it by extracting energy from boar meat using magic. Hearing this, Liliruru questioned whether that truly counted as magic. Rude denied that it was anything special and elaborated that it was simple if one used the reaction between bioenergy and mana to efficiently extract and compress what was needed. He added that there was no concern about it rotting, making it useful for long-term dungeon crawling as well. Liliruru immediately objected, stating that it was not simple at all, and argued that it clearly went beyond the realm of ordinary magic. Rude then reflected that the true method of producing it was kept secret, so he did not know that part, as his own techniques were self-taught. After that, he suggested that they try eating some, since there were plenty available. Liliruru reasoned that it did not seem harmful, and as she placed the supplement in her mouth, she commented that it was delicious. She added that the seasoning was perfect, even if it was specially made for Su. Meanwhile, Rude took some of the other supplements and suggested they have extra worm fluid to restore their mana. Eventually, Liliruru remarked that while it was true that once they started eating, it was hard to stop, this alone would not be enough. Confused by her words, Rude asked whether there was something wrong with it. Calmly, Liliruru replied that it was certainly delicious and that she was sure it had nutritional value. However, she abruptly stood up and questioned whether the act of chewing was not also an important part of a meal. Rude was shocked by her sudden statement, but Liliruru continued, pointing out that Su appeared to be a wolf-type beastman, and that it would be best to give her solid meat with some substance. Further, she continued that it was not just about nutrition and taste, but that Su also needed to strengthen her jaw. While thinking about it, Rude concluded that she did have a point, though he still felt it was not very convincing. After eating, Su yawned and stated that she was starting to feel sleepy, holding on to Rude and saying that they should go to sleep early tonight. Seeing this, Liliruru asked if he was really her papa. Despite that, Rude reasoned that after dinner they would take a bath, and then he would tuck Su into bed while talking about magic, explaining that this had been his nightly routine ever since he met her. Furthermore, he added that going into town seemed to have tired her out, and that she had still been quite frightened by all the people staring at her. As she got up, Su said that she wanted to take a bath together with her master. Rude started to take her along, but before that, he turned and told Liliruru that he was going to give Su a bath and that she should make herself at home. As they were about to leave, Liliruru questioned whether they were really going in together. Rude looked at her and nodded in agreement. However, she immediately rejected this, saying that it was not appropriate for a boy and a girl of their age, and shouted that they would be together. Not minding her objections, Rude stated that they bathed together all the time. Remembering this, Su added that it felt really good when her master scrubbed her, and that it made her very happy. Once again, Liliruru cried out that it was absolutely forbidden for a boy and a girl of their age to be alone together in a locked room. Su then asked why it could not just be the two of them. Annoyed, Liliruru replied that there were many reasons. Suddenly, Su suggested that all of them could go together so that they would not be alone. Immediately, Rude rejected the idea, stating that it would be bad. He thought to himself that unlike Su, who was still a child, Liliruru was a proper young lady, and that this would actually be dangerous. He also noticed that her face had turned red like a tomato. Eventually, out of embarrassment, Liliruru shouted that she did not mind at all and claimed that she had simply been thinking that she wanted to take a shower herself. However, Rude pointed out that her face was bright red and told her that she did not need to force herself to go along with this. Once again, Liliruru shouted that she was not forcing herself and insisted that this was all for the sake of conquering him. At that point, he remarked that if anyone wondered why Liliruru had come to their house in the first place, it had ended with her bringing overnight gear and staying over. In response, she explained that it was so he would accept her as a comrade, and that if they were going to be comrades, getting along was the best first step. She declared that she would definitely get him to join her party. Seeing them start to remove their clothes, censored, Rude thought to himself that he had not seen this coming at all, as it was a completely unexpected turn of events. In the next scene, it continued with Su mentioning that they would all take a bath together, and Rude refused, stating that it was probably a bad idea. He then thought that even though he felt embarrassed about doing this with Liliruru, she noted to herself that, recalling correctly, bath events were a chance to raise affection levels, and there was no way she could let that opportunity slip. Soon, Liliruru started dragging him along while asserting that they were taking a bath together. Seeing this, Rude contemplated that it seemed he did not have the right to refuse. He further emphasized that the bathroom was built quite large, so multiple people could easily fit inside, but Liliruru exclaimed that he should not stare at Aiden's body so intensely. Rude apologized and immediately turned around. Suddenly, Su called out to him, and he asked if she was not done yet. As he moved toward her, they saw the pool and remarked on what a magnificent bathroom it was, after which Su asked where the towels were. Later, Rude lay on the bed, quietly thinking that he had summoned every ounce of his rationality and somehow managed to get through it unscathed. Meanwhile, Liliruru thought he was sleeping soundly, but then noticed that it was not him and remarked that Su fell asleep easily. Abruptly, Rude thanked Liliruru for getting along so well with Su, explaining that Su was wary of anyone other than him, and that he had actually been a little worried. However, he continued that he wanted Sue to have more people she could open her heart to, and that her sleeping face was proof of that. Listening to him, Liliruru mumbled that she had not done anything special, and that the child was simply friendly, and Rud hoped that Liliruru was right. After that, Liliruru stated that he was the first person ever to turn down her party invitation, and Rud responded that it was not as if he had wanted to turn her down. Liliruru then exclaimed that she would make sure he took responsibility and that she would definitely make him join her party. Eventually, Rud hoped that she could continue to get along with Sue. All of a sudden, Liliruru asked what he meant, so Rud explained that Sue seemed to be very wary of others, and that it was too late to change her personality or the way she lived, but that she had taken a liking to Liliruru. As she extended her hand, Liliruru mentioned that she had not come there to make friends with Sue and told him that she would obtain everything she desired. However, she then wondered whether he would take her hand, suggesting they have a small test to see whether that day had yielded any results. Seeing her outstretched hand, Rud contemplated that he had never been the one to grab someone's hand first, and that rejecting it would probably hurt her deeply. In the end, he decided that he would hold her hand. Liliruru then reassured him that he could rest easy, explaining that the hand was being offered not as a party member, but as a friend. After that, the two of them fell asleep. In the next scene, while going through the papers, Rud stated that this should be the spot, marking his first job as an adventurer in Roland. He further explained that there was a forest in this area with a high concentration of mana, and because of that, high-quality medicinal herbs grew abundantly in the nearby grasslands. However, Rud emphasized that since monsters also inhabited the forest, it was managed by the guild, and only C-rank or higher adventurers were allowed to enter. That was why, as an E-rank adventurer, he had decided to gather herbs in the grasslands surrounding the forest instead. After that, he told Sue that the area was dangerous, and that she could wait at home if she wanted. In response, Sue said that she would stay right by her master's side, and that as his slave, she wanted to do a splendid job and be useful to him. Hearing that, Rud figured she would say exactly that, which was precisely why he had chosen this quest. He then asked whether she would help him gather the herbs, and Sue readily agreed. However, Rud reflected that his phobia of parties might be the reason he felt comfortable being with Sue. He wondered whether it was because they were not a party, or because she declared herself to be a slave, or whether he subconsciously thought of it that way. He immediately rejected that idea, thinking that he was fine because he considered her a friend. Then, as he recalled it, Liliruru had mentioned that she had another job coming up. Earlier, Liliruru had said that her party was investigating an unexplored, high-difficulty dungeon. Although the area was considered safe, it was still quite dangerous, and she added that it would have been reassuring if he were there. She had also said that by the time the next investigation came around, she would conquer him. After telling him to prepare himself and wait for her, Rud had thought that Liliruru was doing her best with her party duties, so he would do his best with the work right in front of him. Back in the present, Rud stated that the first thing to cover was the type of herb. Showing his hand, he said that this was the sample, explaining that the herb specified for this request was an annual plant called Eve Sungrass. He further explained that Eve Sungrass bloomed with small flowers when the weather warmed up, and that just before that happened was the time when the leaves were most densely packed with nutrients. Rud then suggested taking a look at the real thing, saying that it would make things easier to understand and that Sue should be able to find them. While plucking the leaves, he explained that at this time of year, the plant had pink buds like the ones he was showing. After smelling it, Sue noted that it had a slightly unique scent. She then walked away, saying that she had memorized the smell. As Rud smelled the flower himself, he reflected that wolf-type monsters had a keen sense of smell, and since Sue had inherited those traits, her sense of smell might be more than 100 times stronger than that of a normal human. All of a sudden, Sue shouted that she had found it and came running toward him, asking if he was going to praise her. While patting her head, Rud said that she was amazing. He then elaborated that Sue was able to find the hard-to-spot herbs one after another by relying on the scent she had memorized. Further, Rud explained that he had given Sue a pouch that functioned like an item box. He noted that it was only enchanted with light spatial compression, but that was more than enough for storing herbs. He also mentioned that since Sue wanted to grow, they should use their time that day for that purpose. He went on to explain that the buds absorbed most of the nutrients, so plants with smaller buds were more valuable as medicinal herbs than those with larger ones, and that thicker leaves indicated better quality. Eventually, Rud advised her to be selective so they would not pick too much, and asked whether she could sniff out the scent of the buds. In response, Sue said that she was starting to understand. Rude then admitted to himself that he was adding information little by little as Sue adapted, and that watching her work so hard made him feel good. They continued like that, and before he realized it, they had become completely absorbed in the task. Rude then said that they should call it a day there, and that doing any more than this would be unnecessary. Before he could finish his thought, Rude suddenly felt something and noted how abrupt it was as he sensed magical power coming from deep within the forest. Looking around, he stayed alert for any sign of monsters, as there had been no reaction just moments earlier. With shock, he realized that it was not only strong, but that the presence itself felt sinister. Seeing him lost in thought, Sue called out to him. Rude then instructed her that they were done gathering herbs and told her to stay right by his side and not wander off. Soon after, something began attacking them relentlessly, but Rude was able to protect both himself and Sue using his magic shield. As he observed the situation, he identified the creature as a wild boar, but immediately rejected that thought because of its enormous size. He then explained that the dark attribute magic power originated from the demon world, and that creatures exposed to a high concentration of cursed energy turned into zombies. He added that the danger level could rise all the way to A rank, and that the guild had not provided any information about this. Suddenly, the boar let out a violent growl. Hearing it, Sue screamed in fear, but Rude calmly told her that everything would be fine and that he would protect her. Hiding behind him, Sue replied that she was not scared because he was there with her. Rude then told her to close her eyes, assuring her that it would be over soon. As he prepared to defeat the creature, Rude thought that since the boar had frightened Sue, he would silence it first. He considered it both a punishment for scaring her and an act of mercy, deciding that he would not even give it time to scream and would release it from its cursed suffering instantly. He further reasoned that for zombified monsters, the source of the cursed energy was located somewhere in the body, and this time it was in the head, which meant that was the part that needed to be sealed. He decided to sever everything except the head to break the curse and prevent the spread of the cursed energy. As time passed, Rude cast a Dispel Curse spell and finished it off, noting to himself that it had taken only 2 seconds. For the cleanup, he used an Electrica magnetism enchantment and then sealed the cursed power. He emphasized that the method had been improvised, but the seal should prevent the erosion of the cursed energy for a while. He also observed that the source of the cursed power was quite far from the forest, and fortunately, the damage to the forest itself seemed minimal. After everything was over, Rude called out to Sue and told her that it was all right now. She asked if it was already over, and he confirmed that it was, then suggested that they head back to the guild and report the incident that day. Suddenly, Sue thanked him for protecting her. Rude replied that he should be thanking her as well, since she had helped him gather the herbs. After that, he thought to himself that something abnormal was definitely happening in the forest. In the next scene, they arrived and headed toward the reception desk. Rude stated that he was done gathering the herbs, and Enan remarked that it was fast, adding that she had expected as much. Rude then said that he had left everything to Sue that day, to which Enan replied that as long as there were no issues with the quality, it was fine. She added that, after all, using slaves for labor was permitted. Noticing the pouch in Sue's hand, Enan asked whether it was an item box, commenting that he certainly possessed some rare magical tools. At that moment, Sue replied that her master had made it for her, and Enan remarked that it was a cute pouch. After that, Enan carefully examined the herbs and stated that they were all high-quality items. She added that she could not believe it was Sue's first time, saying that she clearly had real talent for adventuring. Hearing this, Sue replied that it was all thanks to her master teaching her so many things. She added that, after all, she was her master's slave and would not become an adventurer, then hugged him. Enan then commented that if Sue ever felt like it, she should let them know. Sue, however, refused, stating that she would not, and that she belonged to her master. Once again, a man nearby remarked that treating such a young child like an object meant he was definitely a pervert, while another man commented that she was super cute. As usual, the stares from everyone around them were painful. Enan then announced that the assessment was complete, stating that the quality was excellent, and that with that, the herb-gathering quest was officially finished. At the same time, she asked them to wait a moment while she prepared their payment. Rude then asked whether Savinia was in, explaining that there was something on his mind he wanted to discuss. While handing the herbs to another staff member, Enan replied that Savinia was present, but that despite her appearance, she was quite busy, and that one normally needed to apply for a meeting in advance. However, she added that since it was him, she supposed it would be fine. Enan then excused herself, and Savinia remarked that there was not supposed to be any meeting scheduled for that day, telling him that he should submit a request in advance. As soon as Savinia saw Rude, she noted that it was him, and he apologized for disturbing her while she was busy. Savinia replied that she did not mind if it was him, then asked what had happened. Rude explained that while gathering medicinal herbs, he had encountered a strange monster and had come to report it. Hearing this, Savinia asked what kind of monster it was, so Rude elaborated that it had been zombified by cursed energy and resembled a wild boar, with strength equivalent to a rank. After thinking for a moment, Savinia asked him to explain the details. Rude stated that it had been corrupted by cursed energy and had grown gigantic. At that point, Inan interjected, saying that he meant a monster equivalent to a rank and that he had defeated it all by himself. Rude responded that he had only judged it to be a rank on his own, and that since its movements were simple, it had been an easy opponent. After hearing him, Savinia remarked that she supposed it might look that way to him, but that it would not have gone the same way for an ordinary, low-rank adventurer. She then instructed Inan to immediately suspend all requests in that area, especially those meant for low-rank adventurers, and asked Rude how he would judge the situation given the circumstances. Hearing her question, Rude reflected that he was not exactly an expert, so being asked for his opinion put him in a difficult position. After some thought, he stated that the source of the cursed energy was likely either within the forest or even deeper inside, and that it would be best to identify the cause as soon as possible. He added that he was currently suppressing it with sealing magic, but since it was a simplified version, it would not last very long. Listening to this, Savinia commented that he spoke as if it were nothing, and noted that she herself was still inferior to a specialist. Rude responded that she could even use sealing magic, which was precisely why he had brought this matter to her. He then showed her the sealed wild boar, which shocked her, and reassured her not to worry, explaining that he had sealed away its cursed energy and believed it might serve as a clue to identifying the cause. Rude then added that there was also a piece of flesh from which the curse had been removed, and said that if it seemed useful for anything, she was free to use it. Savinia remarked that he truly was outside the norm, and then questioned what he meant earlier about her being inferior to an expert. Rude replied honestly that he did not know any sealing magic specialists and had no baseline for comparison, adding that since he had only studied from grimoires, he had assumed her level would not be that high. Savinia pointed out that even possessing an item box was not something to be taken lightly, and given his background, she assumed he did not want to stand out unnecessarily. Hearing this, Rude said that he would be careful. Savinia then commented that it was remarkable how she could not sense any cursed energy at all, even from that close, calling it a perfect barrier. She continued by stating that while the creature had certainly been deformed by the influence of cursed energy, its features still matched those of the wild boars native to the forest, and that the real issue lay in the source of the cursed energy itself. Rude then mentioned that there was still cursed energy remaining at the scene, and that they should be able to trace it from there. In response, Savinia said that she would investigate the matter through the guild. Rude replied that if she needed any help, she should simply let him know. Savinia said that she would likely submit a formal request later, but that it was enough for the day. Looking at Sue, she added that he should let the girl rest. She then offered him a special reward for the incident and asked him to accept it, but Rude refused, saying that he did not really need it. Savinia countered that things could have ended in the worst possible way, and that if he refused her token of gratitude, she would lose face. After that, he accepted it, and she thanked him. While bowing, Savinia expressed that she was glad he had come to this guild, saying that his magic was practically godlike. Rude replied that she was exaggerating, but Savinia remarked that his lack of self-awareness was truly troubling, adding that he was quite the sinful one. Meanwhile, Inan came running with some documents, exclaiming that she would take care of transporting the head, while feeling that her workload had just increased. The next day, having come into a large sum of money, Rude went to a bookstore to buy a grimoire for Sue, or at least that had been the plan. However, he wondered how things had ended up the way they did when Sue remarked that he had grown up twisted. In the next scene, Rude concluded that the special reward for exterminating the zombie boar, an impressively large sum, had finally come through, and when combined with the herb gathering rewards, and the bonus for their high quality, it amounted to quite a fortune. He reflected that being completely penniless just a few days ago now felt like ancient history. At that moment, Sue asked whether her master was rich now, and he replied that it was only a little. However, Rude then asked if he could borrow her pouch for a moment. While holding it, he explained that he had added identification and calculation functions to the pouch's spatial compression, making money management much easier. After that, he handed the pouch back to her and told her that it was her share, so she should make sure to keep it safe inside. Sue immediately insisted that the money was meant for him, but Rude corrected her, explaining that she was the one who had gathered the herbs and that he had merely accepted the reward on her behalf, so she was free to use it however she liked. Holding the pouch, Sue quietly murmured that she did not really know what she wanted right now, and that simply being by his side was enough to make her happy. Rude gently patted her head and suggested that they look for something she might want today. After that, the two of them wandered around, and eventually Sue pointed towards some ice cream. Soon after, they shared an ice cream together. Later on, Sue asked if that was the place and Rude agreed, saying that he had had his eye on that bookstore since passing by it earlier and that he planned to buy a grimoire today. As he searched, he found a book titled Understanding Zombies. He went on to explain that it was an all-purpose introduction to magic theory designed so that even the undead could understand it, written by Aquacuxi, or Zommun for short. Although it was a bit niche, he personally highly recommended it as an introductory magic theory book. He added that it had once been sold off by Trump and the others, and to think it would now be lined up on a shelf here, just as expected of Roland. He noted that it was one of his favorite books, and easily the most understandable one he had ever read. Eventually, he explained that the series only had 2 volumes, the first being introductory and the second being applied theory. Apparently, the applied volume was so complex that it became unpopular, often criticized as incomprehensible or incomplete theory. Even so, Rude continued by saying that he had taken that primer and uniquely modified and adapted it, which led to his current magical theory. To him, Aquacuxi was like a mentor in magic, and if they had been from the same generation, he would have loved to meet him, though that was a dream that could never come true, considering the book was over 100 years old. While staring at Sue, Rude thought that she had been taking an interest in magic lately, so he was confident she would be able to read that introductory book in no time. Suddenly, Sue started trying on a pair of glasses, and seeing her like that, Rude was shocked to think that even Savinia looked intelligent and stylish in glasses, which meant they might work for Sue as well. He added to himself that reading while wearing glasses would definitely be cute. As he opened the book, Rude remarked that it was incredibly well made. He noted that most introductory books were merely copies, but this one might actually be the real thing. Something caught his attention, and he questioned the description he had noticed earlier. He realized that it had been added as a supplement to the original explanation, meaning the theory itself was not wrong. If anything, it was a brilliant addition. After that, he called out to Sue and told her to go inside with him. The moment they stepped in, Rude remarked that it was pitch dark inside, prompting Sue to ask whether this really was a bookstore. Meanwhile, Rude focused on the traces of magic. He noted that he could not sense anything from the outside because a magic circle had been carved into the wall. It was a high-level formula specifically designed to block and conceal magical power. He further observed that there were even magic tools present, leading him to conclude that this was no ordinary bookstore. Suddenly, a voice questioned what that was. Hearing it, Rude asked if someone was there, and a girl soon stirred, waking up from her sleep. Seeing her, Rude asked whether she was the owner of the shop and mentioned that he liked the book. She casually responded that he could just take it, and immediately after saying that, she slipped on the book. Eventually, Rude asked how much it cost, but the girl replied that she did not need any payment and was simply clearing out inventory. Unexpectedly, she began crawling toward him, and commented that he was cloaked in a rather interesting magical aura. She then asked whether he was investigating her, noting that the aura felt distorted, and questioned how he had cultivated his magic to such a level. Hearing this, Rude replied that he had not intended to shape it that way, suggesting that it might be because he had learned magic from many different books. The girl laughed at that and declared that books were her master, calling him an interesting brat. Rude thought to himself that she was calling him a child, even though she clearly looked younger than him. At the same time, Sue remained on guard, and he wondered if she sensed that there was something strange about this girl. Still, Rude continued his analysis. He realized that from the girl standing before him, he could sense absolutely no magical power at all. Magic existed within everything. Even swordsmen and martial artists possessed it, yet from her, he felt nothing. He was confident in his own ability to perceive magic, and even his eyes could not see a trace of it. He then reasoned that concealing magic to a level invisible, even to a mage's perception, was something only high-level mages could accomplish. Because of that, he asked whether she had perhaps made the copy herself. The girl denied it, saying it was not a copy, and told him to wait, explaining that it was her book. In the next scene, the girl emphasized that the author's name was Aquacuxi. She explained that the author's age, gender, and even whether they were a mage were all shrouded in mystery, and that if they were still alive, they would be over 100 years old by now. Hearing this, Rude thought there was no way a genius like that could be standing here. However, the girl then stated that she herself had written that very book the moment she was born, and added that she was glad he liked it. Rude found it impossible to believe that the girl in front of him was over 100 years old. Normally, she would be an old woman by now, unless she was an elf, a race known for their longevity. Even then, Aquacuxy had written in her books that she was human. He went on to reason that her magic theory was also a theory made by humans, for humans, which was exactly why this situation should have been impossible. The girl then introduced herself simply as Aqua, explaining that she had been reincarnated. Hearing that, Rude questioned what she meant by that, and she described it as inspiration that struck the moment she cried for the second time. As she walked away, Aqua explained that her memories had been reconstructed from zero in an instant, sparked by a faint glimmer, and that she had rushed to write everything down. She added that she was glad she had set up automatic writing in her previous life. Rude was left in shock. He realized she was talking about reincarnation magic, and not just in theory, but one that had actually succeeded. That was truly unknown magic, as reincarnation had only ever been researched and theorized as a possibility, with no mage ever having achieved it. He went on to think that if one of the three great magics deemed impossible in the modern era had truly been accomplished, then this result overturned everything they knew about the world of magic. Nevertheless, Aqua casually admitted that she had messed up, which was why she looked like that. She explained that she had stopped growing, her magical power had degraded quite a bit, too much sunlight could kill her, and on top of that, she became extremely sleepy very easily. She then added that she also went by the name Marine, and told him to keep that in mind. Immediately, Rude asked whether she had reincarnated again, but she denied it, explaining that Aquacuxy was just a pen name. Rude admitted in disbelief that he had not known authors worked under pen names. Soon after, Aqua noticed something and told him to stop using honorifics. She explained that although she might not look like it, she was an incredible mage, which was why everyone acted so stiff around her, and that she was not good with that kind of treatment. Rude said that he understood and remarked that she adapted quickly, then apologized. Aqua replied that she did not mind at all and said she was totally fine with it because she had a huge heart. She went on to say that her heart was like the ocean, so maybe he should call her Marine. Rude commented that she was amazing, but she warned him that he could casually stop calling her strange names. Holding the book, Rude remarked that he understood now. Aqua told him that he could have the book, and that they were free to take as many books from the shop as they wanted, whenever they wanted. She then mentioned that she was going to sleep for a while, but that she would contact him again when she woke up. Suddenly, Aqua hugged him, and said that she had actually taken quite a liking to him. She then asked for his name, remarking that he looked like an exquisitely crafted doll. Rude hurriedly pulled away and shouted his name, saying that it was Rude. Aqua responded that she would remember it. Shocked, Rude realized that Aquacuxy had remembered his name, and as he took a better look at her, he sensed a strange sense of composure about her. At that moment, Sue suddenly shouted that she liked her master, and asked whether he thought she had taken a liking to him too, insisting that he should not treat her like a child. Suddenly, Aqua shouted as she jumped over Sue, exclaiming about the adorable creature she had just seen. Instantly, Sue hid behind Rude and cried out that she was her master's slave and belonged to him alone. Eventually, Rude explained that as Aqua could see, Sue was simply shy and asked her not to get Sue too worked up. In response, Aqua teasingly asked whether she could rewrite his memories and make him hers instead. Hearing that, Rude reacted in shock, saying that was not fine at all, and that it was frightening. Aqua immediately clarified that it was just a joke and told him not to get angry. Still, Rude thought to himself that it was scary precisely because it felt like something she could actually do. Aqua then remarked that she should probably smooth things over as well. Rude went on to explain that Aqua was like a magic mentor to him, and that she was the one who had written the magic book he used to read. That was why he had chosen that book, and wanted to give it to Sue as a present. Holding the book, Sue thanked him, and said she would treasure it for the rest of her life. At that moment, Aqua exclaimed that if Sue intended to read it, then she should give her that as well. Noticing the glasses, Rude asked what they were, and Aqua explained that if Sue was going to read the book, she would need to see magical power properly. With those special lenses, the glasses would allow her to see magic itself. Rude then asked whether Sue could not see magical power, and Sue agreed, saying that she could only vaguely feel it but could not see it clearly. Aqua responded by stating that sensing magic and seeing it might seem similar, but they were entirely different things.